to have you on Gracious AI Radio. I've been wanting to talk to you about your businesses in AI, using AI, and how AI can help business leaders accelerate the transition to a resilient, regenerative, and simply fairer economy. And you are doing that in very original ways. You have a passion for it. You have stories to tell. So I want to share that with our audience today. So first of all, what sparked your interest in AI?
Thank you very much for having me here. I'm excited for our conversation today. I think the reason that I got involved with AI was because I suspected that it had the ability to identify patterns that were unseen. It existed, but that we couldn't see with the tools that we had before. And that idea of unveiling a mystery or understanding a reality that is clouded or behind a veil really excited me. And I thought, how many stupid, dumbass decisions have I made because I just didn't know what was going on? Because I was guessing and I guessed wrong. And I thought that by investing energy and time, focus, and building a team around AI, we could start to understand reality in a way that we could make good decisions easily. Whereas before we had to be near geniuses and we would still miss because we just didn't actually know what was going on. And that really turned me on. I think I've always been, from the time that I was a kid, a pretty curious person. I wanted to understand things. And there would often be this gap that would open up between, I would get confused and it would drive me into a sort of state of, I don't know, I would get agitated and I would have the energy that I could use to look something up back in the day, in an encyclopedia or later in Google. And oh my gosh, what we've been able to do with ChatGPT has just been incredible. So I think that was kind of it. Just this curiosity, this feeling that there was something behind what was going on. There was a way to understand things. And if we could understand it, we could make better decisions, better for all of us.
Mm. Yeah, what makes me curious is what role does intuition versus intellect play in your decision making, and how have you made sure that, let's say, in this age of AI, where we can calculate and measure everything, where we can find patterns beyond what we as humans are capable to analyze, where in that factors intuition and our agency to navigate ourselves with the help of AI, but not outsourcing all of that to AI?
I think that's a great question. I would I would say that I think a lot of it has to do with which questions matter to you is not really a topic for science, let's say, right? That comes down to your values or that comes down to philosophy. There's this meme going that English majors will rule the world going forward. It used to be the people with the hard sciences, but the English majors are used to, thinking, reading Shakespeare, thinking about, the human condition, narrative, stories. Why is it that we want to do what we want to do? I think that's a deeper mystery that beyond AI. I think AI in its basic form is kind of statistics, which is something that I've loved for a long time. But it doesn't tell you what to value, just like science won't tell you what to value. I think we have to feel that, and then we can use these tools to move closer to what we value. But it starts there. I don't think that we can, we can gather data, and there's plenty of social science data about kind of what makes for a good life, and you can go, through these different components and these things. But I think it's a very intuitive thing, and I think we have emotions for a reason that tell us whether something is right for us or wrong for us. We want to do more of it or less.
I love that. I love that meme. And it's something I'm very much in agreement with. We have to become almost more human in the age of AI and develop these other types of intelligences, like emotional, like social, like storytelling, like kinesthetic, bodily intelligence, because those distinguish us from the machine. And once we open ourselves up to them and expand our range of values by integrating them, we can collaborate in very different ways with machine than we have been today. And, that will also change the interfaces that we interact with the machine and how we relate to nature and each other. So I'm really excited that you brought that up. So let's say this question of values. What set of values do you have in place to operate with AI in, let's say, a responsible way in your businesses?
I think a good idea to explore there, or kind of a jumping off point, is what you mentioned about, like, what does it mean to be human and to be more human? And I think where we're going in the various businesses is definitely towards enhancing the human and letting the machine do the things that humans were doing, but we weren't as good as the machines at doing them. And, I often kind of look backwards to imagine a future trajectory. And if I look at the jobs, particularly in agriculture, which is a field that we're involved with, literally in a field, such a large percentage of the population were in agriculture for so long, and it was backbreaking work. It had its own rewards, but before the invention of a lot of technology, I think, I don't know what the figure is, maybe 100 years ago, it was something like 70% of the population was involved in agriculture. Now it's like 1.2.
Mm.
And your people, the Dutch people, are these world leaders in developing things that, were unimaginable even a couple of years ago, where they're creating these kind of digital twins of plants, and they're able to put anything into the environment of this plant and then see how it reacts. It's incredible. It's happening at the University of Groningen. And, that saves us from having to kind of learn the hard way, and face bad crops, or just have to learn from the limited experience that a human can go through. We can cycle through a million different possible things. And I think you can kind of look at it and go, does anyone want to go back to that? Where 70% of us were doing farming that sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. There often wasn't enough food, right? It was a bad story. And, obviously there have been issues that have come up with that, monocropping. I think there are a lot of valid concerns about the way that agriculture is developed. And maybe I'm running a little bit too long with this story, but I'll kind of bring it back to, I think humans have left backbreaking, randomly rewarding work. And I think it gives us the chance to be more human and do the things that are unique to us, and let a plow be a plow, and let a drone with image recognition go identify a weed that needs to be pulled, because that actually is an incredibly human thing to be doing. And we can be doing other things with our time, and there are other, more human things. So that's the idea, that the AI does the things that are, let's say, less human or less interesting for us as humans in our development, and that we can focus on the things that really matter to us and that we want to do. And I think we're just at the beginning of exploring that, because effectively we've been so bound by this basic work, this drudgery.
This drudgery. All this work that we've been doing. Such a drudgery. Yeah, but I agree. I mean, still so many of the jobs like accounting, story accountant, I love you, and other, really repetitive jobs, dull jobs, dangerous jobs can be easily done by the machines. And we can do what is more dear to us and more exciting, more fulfilling in many ways. So that's a key value that you hold while building your businesses. What are some case studies of how you apply AI within any of the businesses that you have? And how do you create an ethical environment for these algorithms that you're using to stay on course?
So talk about a couple of different things that we're involved with. So one of them is around controlled environment agriculture, where we're monitoring plants and we're figuring out what the right inputs are using artificial intelligence, the right amount of light, the number of hours, the intensity, the spectrum for each stage of the plant's growth, the amounts of the temperature, the humidity, the water, the CO2. This is indoor agriculture. There are a lot of these different factors, and it becomes this very complex pattern. And it's very hard for a farmer to know what to do, what the right settings are for each of these. And if you kind of roll it out with a traditional experimental approach, you'd have to do it 10,000 lifetimes of a farmer. And AI enables you to kind of see these patterns and speculate about how they would work together in totally new ways. And the sort of ethic behind that, or the human values there, are that we want to bring the value of plants that humans consume. We want to lower the cost so much that great plants are accessible to everyone. And that means economically accessible. So the cost is low, the price is low, and then geographically. So even in areas affected by climate change, you can be growing indoor at a low cost and providing farmers market level food in terms of its nutrition and other qualities that's to everyone. So that's a big mission. We feel like a lack of nutrition is kind of at the base. I come from the US. There's been a big obesity issue there. Even if you're sort of inactive for a while, you put a little weight on, you notice it kind of makes you a little bit crazy. It really sort of degrades your life. We see health and nutrition as the kind of foundation.
Let me stop you there. So
Yeah.
let's create a little vision of the future for people.
Sure.
So in the future, I would have an installation at home where I can grow these crops myself, or what is your idea to implement this for a village? Like, I live in a very small village. We don't have a supermarket here. What, let's say, is the dream of this technology to help a village that is remote have the best food markets, crops available?
Yeah, so there are different scales at which these will operate. I think it's great if you have an herb garden at home where you have these kind of fresh herbs that are accessible whenever you're cooking. Then if we look at the cost of energy dropping, so with solar, wind, renewables, all these things, if energy can drop significantly, then the cost of intelligence is dropping dramatically. This is what the AI is. The robotics that could be involved, those costs are dropping a lot too. I think you can reach the point where food is deflationary, where the prices go down, where it's just sort of, like the air you breathe, it's water, it's just there. There's an abundance of healthy vegetables. And then, of course, there's some logistics. I mean, if we're imagining the future, you could imagine drone delivery, you can imagine, self-driving cars, all kinds of technologies that may lead towards centralization, within a 10-kilometer radius or 20 or something like that. We'll see. My general approach is to say, where's the technology today? Where's the problem today? Let's work on that. Let's solve that. And then we're not kind of sitting there waiting and hoping. But as soon as the new tech comes in, we embrace it, figure it out and deploy it. But we're definitely into solving real world problems right now.
That's an amazing vision and sounds very promising, especially since the food has been increasingly pricey each year for so many years, especially if you want to buy organic food. We all know that. So what are some of the risks you may encounter on the way working with algorithms in agriculture, and some unforeseen obstacles that might occur?
Yeah, well, I can tell you about risks that we just encounter all the time. So I think you always need a human in the loop. You always need a human involved because like we deliver nutrients in a water-based solution. So we have drippers that go into a medium and the plants grow out of that medium. And sometimes the drippers get clogged and they don't work, and you need someone to come by and fix it. So the system can break. We're using LLM and LLMs hallucinate. So they can come up with crazy ideas that, would be very bad and would kill the crop. So you definitely need a human in the loop. Those are some of the risks. In terms of, other risks, if you sort of expand the picture very broadly, I think that you run into the problem of a lot of people losing their jobs very quickly. It depends how, there are all these panics. And if you go back in history, everyone thinks that whatever the new thing is going to kill us. And I saw one yesterday where they were tracing it. Books were rotting people's brains, and then radio, and then TV, and then the internet. And at each turn, and now mobile phones and social media. And at each turn, you had the headline, and then 15 years later, a new headline thing. We should go back to the old thing that was going to rot everybody's brain. So the new one is that people should start watching TV so that they have a longer attention than they have with TikTok, which is just crazy making. So, but yeah, so, there is no history of really huge job displacements and, all of these things in a way from tech. I think we have infinite desires and we come up with jobs and we come up with things to do. I think they just move up Maslow's hierarchy and they become, more interesting and, let's say, maybe finer, more delicate, more ephemeral, more abstract in terms of the issues that we're focused on.
I agree. Just one of the risks there is, are we fast enough to find these new ways to, sustain ourselves and create jobs for people whose jobs are going to be eliminated first? And will they have the opportunity to be reskilled and re-educated? Because, for instance, when horse and carriage was replaced by the car, there were a lot of horses jobless. And guess what happened with them? We ate them.
You guys still eat them over there, don't you? Horse meat sandwiches.
I don't, but sure
No?
they're out there. I never had horse meat in my life.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
one bridge too far. But yeah, so I don't want to compare that one-on-one with humans, but let's say, how are we going to make sure? I'm not asking you to have the answer, but can we brainstorm about how we can already inspire our environment and ourselves to be adaptable and re-educate ourselves and make sure that other people will have tools to do so soon too?
Let me kind of challenge the assumption for a second that we want jobs. I've lived in Visa for a long time. I don't think, the majority of the people there have any interest at all in a job. That whole thing, honey, I don't dream of labor, that idea. So I think a lot of people would be very pleased not to have jobs. I've employed thousands of people. I would say the vast majority would prefer to have had that job. Although it was great. If you're listening, I'm hiring. I'd love to work with you. I think most people would just say, hey, given the choices, I'm not going to. So I think also if you look today at what our jobs, the tasks make up a lot of our jobs, they would just be unimaginable for someone 100 years ago. They're just too weird. And, so I don't know that we want jobs. I think what we want is to be able to make a meaningful contribution to our community. I think that's a very satisfying thing. That's an inbuilt drive. I think we want meaningful connections with other people. And I think we want to sort of explore and then put out explore what our gifts are, like what we can uniquely contribute, and then make that happen. And I think that rarely actually happens in the context of work. Even among the people who have every advantage, I think they're often spending less than, a small percentage of their time in their area of, major contribution. Yeah. Passionate and
Right.
all of those things.
Their zone of genius.
The zone of genius. Exactly.
There you see a future where more people will not have to think about making money necessarily. Is that then, supported by universal basic income or by us not needing money anymore? What do you see happening there?
Well, I see a kind of deflation because technology is deflationary. It just gets cheaper and cheaper to do the same thing. So think of like Moore's law. Think of like the amount of memory in your computer. It's unimaginably cheap, a fraction of a penny, compared to what it was, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so that intelligence and then the energy that we can capture, I think really lower prices. And, if you look at food prices, which we've been talking about, I think those are going to go down. Housing prices, all of these things, can go down. So universal basic income, I think is a great way to do it, but I don't think people will need as much money as, as we've needed so far because costs will go down and are going down. Probably during our conversation, the costs of AI have dropped significantly. It's
Mhm.
wild.
Yeah, it's very wild, and we have to do some work because, for instance, in Africa, the cost of processing power is 30 times higher than it is for us in, let's say, Europe and the US.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Wow.
Right. So, yeah, we have to work on making these technologies universally accessible, of course, with the right value set in place. How about your other business, which is fascinating, which is another passion of yours, I would assume, really focused on well-being and mental health. Can you explain what that is?
So plant medicine and what we're doing there. Hmm. So plant medicine, I think is fairly poorly understood. There's a lot of damage done in the last, like, let's say 90 years of prohibition, almost no research, and that's several generations. So a lot of kind of cultural, let's say, history or things that you would learn from your parents, that's gone as well. And so I think we're in a period of really rediscovering something that was part of society. By plant medicine, I mean cannabis. So we can talk about psilocybin. We can talk about, ayahuasca, all of these things. Where I'm specifically involved right now is in medical cannabis. And what we're doing is we've built an AI that gathers information from laboratory reports around the psychoactive compounds and around the scientific literature and real world evidence. So someone kind of just talking about their experience, and we sort of structure it and using that information to help people go from wherever they are to within the set of possibilities that the plant medicine to where they want to go. So that can mean I'm experiencing acute pain or I have chronic pain, and which combinations with which minimum effective dosage of terpenes and THC is going to alleviate this pain. And we kind of feel like we're on a mission from God because a lot of the things that we're replacing are opioids, which are horribly addictive and have really ravaged, people's lives. I have friends and families who are just family members who really suffered there. In the United States, it's been a tragedy, a lot of lost lives, destroyed lives. And, plant medicine's never really, nobody's ever died from it. And we think it can help people a lot. The problem is there just isn't enough information. So as we were talking about earlier, there's this sort of cloud of smoke. In this case, nobody really knows exactly how it works. And yet it is knowable, but it wasn't knowable before because you didn't have the data and then you didn't have the tools like an AI that can understand these patterns about the person, about the product, and, the general research and help people go from one state to another. So we're very excited about it. And, the sort of main areas where it's helpful are anxiety, depression. I suffer from insomnia, helps with that, and chronic pain, multiple sclerosis. There's just a range of diseases where it can really help, but there's been too much kind of wandering around and just trying stuff. And so we help people to draw a straight line or a straighter line to where they want to go. Some of the earliest research around cannabis or kind of descriptions of it came from, I think it was in the 1950s. There was a journalist who went up to Harlem and he learned from jazz musicians how to consume it. And those guys had developed their knowledge based on their experiences, and it was transmitted to them kind of socially. But that was limited by what those guys had tried and what they'd tried it for. And now we're kind of breaking free of all of that. And we're saying, hey, everything that humans know and that we've ever kind of learned about this is at your fingertips. So instead of having a saxophonist next to you who's, tried a few things, guiding you, you can have basically the sum of all human knowledge to guide you and say, hey, these flavors, these smells are going to produce this effect in you. And then it knows you better than maybe you know yourself, because after a few experiences or by answering a few questions, it can sort you from the rest of the human population and say, hey, for you, these particular things will take you where you want to go.
I kind of drifted away in this future vision of learning a new instrument with the help of the best jazz musicians. And I do believe AI has many beautiful applications that a lot of people still don't know about. There's still a lot of fear around AI. What would you want to say to those people?
Yeah, I would say that fear has kept humans alive forever. The fear of the new. So I think, the people who heard a rustling in the bush and ran toward it didn't reproduce. It's the people who are afraid and ran away. Although we keep having this kind of genetic anomaly, we keep producing these weirdos who aren't afraid of things. But in general, I think we're very fearful monkeys. I think it's totally natural. I would say as best you can, and I wouldn't stress myself out about it, but as best you can, try to avoid kind of going all in on the fear. There's this magic box theory that, you know, we used to be able to understand things and now we can't at all. And that led to a lot of conspiracy theories as a way to put a narrative on something and, give us a sense of power or control back. You used to be able to fix your car. Now you can't. Nobody can understand what happens in an iPhone. Right? It's impossible. So you have these magic boxes and, I think the conspiracy theories, part of it, I'm a bit allergic to them as most people are who've lived in Washington, D.C., because that's where I was born and where I grew up. There are a lot of conspiracy theories about what happens there. And then if you're hanging out there and you're meeting the people, forget it. Nobody's organizing at that level and everybody's very chatty. They would tell you if there was something really going on. It's actually just a messy system. So, yeah, so I would say, try to find something positive that interests you, that you can value about the AI, and try not to, or even kind of look back in your own life and say, man, I was afraid of, whatever. I was afraid of, some new technology, and it turned out that it was okay in the end. I think if you talk to a lot of technologists who are afraid of AI, so not, let's say someone kind of living their lives, but let's say someone kind of dedicated to technology, there are kind of these two camps now. There's the people who believe that, with some smart guardrails and some good sort of basic decision making, things are going to go well. And the other side has a kind of apocalyptic view that AI is going to take over and it's going to treat us the way that we treat, animals, and put them in the zoo and poke and prod them and poke and prod us, and that'll be the end of it. I'm skeptical of that view. I don't think that really has any basis in what I've seen in building AI. Again, I think AI is very hard to do. Some of these people are very smart and they built a lot of AI. But I also wonder if what they're doing is sort of creating a god. And a lot of the people with that view aren't particularly religious. And I wonder if a religious impulse is kind of sneaking in there and saying, hey, I'll be your god that you can be afraid of.
I so relate to this. There's this huge movement around transhumanism and around really ascending into the cloud and uploading ourselves as a quantum software program, traveling to space and, existing within this machine. And I feel it as this impulse of merging with God, but some God that lives outside of you. not the God that lived within and not your connection to Mother Nature. And I see it as a problem because we've been so disconnected from nature, from our bodies, from ourselves, really. And now AI is here and people jump on the boat thinking, oh, there's our savior. The work that I do with my clients is also really about embodiment and around not idealize what technology can do, but really focus on human values and connecting to who we truly are. This is really a spiritual journey we're on as humanity. If we want to do AI well, we have to become more aware of what it means to be human to each and every one of us. Is that something you can relate to or
Yeah.
see?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with everything that you're saying. I think in the past, it was really important to be strong. No, that doesn't really matter, physically strong, and I think now it's important to be intelligent. I don't think that's really going to matter, and we've already seen examples of that, like people who can do extremely long math problems, long division. It's a party trick. It doesn't matter, right? It's not of real value because we have the tools to do that, right? Or spelling, like we have a spell checker. So I think a lot of intelligence is going to become devalued. And then I think it does move to finer things. It does move to a kind of spiritual level. It moves to an emotional understanding and ability to connect with each other. I think those are the things that by having AI and other things do the heavy lifting, we can become more who we are, and things that have been denied and that have led to all kinds of psychological issues and all kinds of misery. I think we're really going to look back on this time 100 years from now and say, like, what were those people thinking? Like, so basic.
Yes, I so agree. And I'm so looking forward to be one of those people looking back. I hope time will tell for us. Yeah, let's get back to your businesses because one of the main components in, guiding AI with grace, doing this ethically, is about building resilient and diverse teams. How do you find people who you can actively build around these algorithms and these business ideas? And how is that different in the age of AI than it was before?
So I think that taste matters. Your personal experience, your values matter far more than before. So if you have something that can execute really well, it becomes about what do you want to do? What should you do? It's a different kind of way of thinking. And, if I look back at companies that I've had over the years, the majority of the people have been focused on the execution. And now we basically have a free, you know, a university graduate in AI, right? That can do all of these things for us. And we can have these very short loops. So before I would say, hey, Bob, hey, Sally, can you do this? And they would come back 2 weeks later and we would have to edit or give some feedback another 2 weeks. Now that's like a hour long process. We've iterated a couple of times, for free and it's great. So I do wonder about the ability of someone coming into the workforce to develop experience and pace and all of these things because they didn't start like there isn't really a reason to mentor in the same way. It kind of happened because there was this execution that someone needed to do, and that doesn't really need to happen anymore. So I'm curious to see how that'll play out. So in terms of my companies, I'm just really seeking out ridiculously talented people and multiplying their capabilities by 10. So if you have someone who's incredibly talented and you multiply by 10, you have something amazing. If someone has less experience or less software, you multiply by 10, you still don't have very much. So I think there's a kind of extreme, there's a sort of rewards going to freakishly talented people because the tech is a multiplier of that. And before what would happen is, I'm talking about, the person who was far and away the best person in their program and their MBA or whatever, right? Before, that person also just needed to work with lots of people to execute. Now that person can just, very quickly have feedback. So I think the returns of AI are kind of outsized. Now, to go back to your question about diversity, because you're with most of these products and services, you're serving a whole population. If you have someone who has no experience in what it means to be part of that population, doesn't know, what the values are, good luck, right? You're not going to be able to reach those people in that community. So I think someone who has that experience is essential to be able to serve, those markets.
And how do you help or guide your teams to work with AI effectively? Do you have specific tools? These tools we use, these tools we use to hack our jobs, these tools we use in the actual products. Is there anything you do to educate people that are onboarding with you to get up to speed with the latest tools?
So we don't, because I think someone starting with one of our companies kind of knows that they're joining a team that's really focused on AI and tech. And so it self-selects. You're checking out the latest model and what it can do. And that's just sort of built into the culture of our companies because that's our foundation.
Mm. Right. But what kind of tools do you use on a daily basis in the operations of your teams?
Yeah. So I would say that there are two types of tools. There are tools that are on the market. So ChatGPT, GPT-4, Claude, these general purpose models. Then we're using them, specific models for specific tasks. And then we're building our own. And for the most part, we're building our own stuff. And so those are kind of the two categories. The one just commercially available, everybody can use it, and the other we're developing for ourselves and to put out into the market.
One, let's say, final question, or actually two final questions. What does gracious AI mean to you? How do you imagine a future in which a form of benevolent AI is really, making some utopian dreams we have finally achievable goals? How does it accelerate the regeneration of of our planet? How does it help scale sustainability and diversity on a massive scale? How do you see that future and are inspired by that future?
I think it's a great question. And for for some reason, I kind of hear a negative voice in my head, which is a kind of, what you get from the media about how all of those things are going wrong, and they're on a bad path and the oceans are warming and we're all going to die and we're all going to get cooked. And it's all the result of decisions that people made before we were born or that our parents' generation made, and we just have to live with it. And Greta Thunberg and shame on you. All of that's kind of coming up for me weirdly as you're saying with it. And I think it's because it's like I'm so used to hearing those things, and yet new technology and these new tools, they don't get the press, but I think that they can do all of the things that you're describing, or they can help towards that. We have more intelligence, we have energy costs that are getting lower to execute on these intelligent things. Like all of these things are being built, and you have these amazing young people who are pouring their lives into solving these solutions. And I'm optimistic, that we have a chance and that we can do these things. And that is this gracious application of the AI, of AI tools and of this new technology. So, and I think it's across the board. And I get to talk with people about this, a couple times a week. I'm talking to new companies and seeing how I could help in some way as they're developing these solutions. And it's really inspiring. A wonderful, wonderful thing.
Mm, yeah, we're so obsessed and addicted to sensation, right? To negative news. And therefore, I'm so inspired and, you know, I just want to put all these positive stories in front of people because there are so many out there, but our popular imagination is crowded with negative news. So I'm really happy that you've shared what you've shared today. One final question. What is, let's say, your nugget of wisdom for younger people who are going to be these future leaders who might have different work definitions, different success definitions, and want to contribute the best they can to the regeneration of our planet?
I think one of the great things about being young, and I say this as someone who's not young anymore, is, is that you have so much energy and you can just burn it. And I would say the thing to do is do a lot and try a lot of things. And in the doing of the thing, learn what do you like, what works for you, find your fit. But I would say try a bunch of stuff and know that when you fail or when you get negative feedback, that's information directing you to another opportunity or to keep going because you don't care, because you love it. And, you've gotten some pushback, but you've got this internal drive to do it. And that none of it makes any sense and nobody got it figured out. And that's the thing to do. So go out there, try stuff, learn by doing, and just keep pushing.
Mm.
Use the energy that you have. That would be my advice to young people.
Yeah, amazing. It's really about this adaptability, right? When Darwin said survival of the fittest, he might have said survival of the most adaptable. And I think that is our key evolutionary theme, especially in the age of AI, because so many things will change so fast. So I agree. We agreed a lot, Clayton. But we also had
And I'm
an
not-
interesting conversation regardless. And I thank you so much for your time.
Hey,
And
thank you so
for
much for having me. It was really a pleasure talking with you.
likewise.